What up, folks? I'm with the awesome, phenomenal Susanna Rodriguez, very well known in the Aikido space, very inspirational instructor, and becoming a good friend of mine. I know she trained with Irv Faust. She runs a dojo in Albany and has just been, a very influential person that I think most of us in the USAF Aikido space know. Welcome and please share your story with us today.
Thank you, Sewell. Thanks for having me on your podcast. This is really
Of course,
cool.
my
I'm excited
pleasure.
you're doing this. I'm excited you're doing this project.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. So, what do you got for us today?
All right. Well, my Aikido journey is a kind of windy one. You probably know this, but my mom ran a dojo for many years in my hometown. So I was a dojo kid, dojo rat, whatever we call those folks. And unlike some people, I didn't think Aikido was that great as a kid. I thought it was
Mm,
kind of a little bit weird. And I grew up in a hippie town, so I was just kind of like, yeah, I don't know. And as I did kids class, I think we got dragged to kids class, and it was fun. I don't get me wrong, I had a good time, but I wanted to be a horseback rider. That's all I really cared about as a young
um,
kid. So as soon as I was old enough to take care of myself, which in my house was about 11 or 12, I started taking a different school bus home after school that took me as close as possible to the horse stables. And then I would just spend the entire afternoon and evening there. And my mom would come pick me up after her class at the dojo. And I never really started practicing until I was about 30 years old, 29 or 30. And it came about in a sort of indirect way. I had left New York City where I had been living, and I moved to my hometown for a job that I thought was going to be kind of a career changer. And not only did it turn out not to be a career changer and was a job I did not enjoy very much, but I didn't have a social life because I was living in my hometown and I had left New York City and all my friends and colleagues. And I was just not having that good a time. And I thought I was masking it, but I wasn't. And my mom picked up on it. And so one day she said to me, look, why don't you come to winter camp with me? Buy a ticket. All you'll have to pay for is the plane ticket. I've got a hotel room. Stay with me. Go to the
nice.
beach. Get some sun. Like swim in the ocean and just snap out of it.
That
You're in a
is
funk.
that is the formula. Like I do it. Like winter camp, go
Yes.
early, like Thursday, stay till Monday, take
Yes.
Donovan's class, like
Yes.
Peter and Penny's. It's great.
Yes. Yeah. It actually has become my favorite camp. It's my
Mm.
favorite Aikido time. I love Peter and Penny's vibe. I love being near the ocean. Jumping in the ocean after a whole day of classes is maybe the best feeling there is.
Indeed.
Um, yeah. So I did. I accompanied my mom to winter camp, and I was all prepared to get sun and surf and feel better. And then it rained the entire time, and it
Mm.
was sort of dark and gloomy and rainy, the way it can sometimes be in Florida.
Right.
Um, and so by the time Saturday rolled around, my mom said, "Look, come to the dojo with me this morning. Don't stay in the hotel room just reading all day. Come with me, watch the tests. We'll go out afterwards. It'll be fun." And I didn't really think it was going to be that fun, but I was like, okay, I'll go. And I brought my book thinking, I'm just going to read. I'm just going to entertain myself. And then when testing is over, we'll go do whatever we do. And this was back when the dojo was separate from the hotel. It wasn't all in one place. So we had to drive. And we probably had to
Oh,
drive.
before my
Yeah.
time, right? Because it's the
Yeah.
CU Grand, whatever,
Yeah. We stayed in the
Ocean
Howard.
Sky,
We
right?
stayed. Yeah. Back then it was the Howard Johnsons.
Hmm.
And in some ways, it was almost more fun to stay in a no frills place. But in any case, um, I did go to testing with her and I did bring my book, but I ended up not reading because there was this pair of students doing sort of open mat practice for their Shodan tests that I could not take my eyes off. And the female half was a student of Harvey's, and the male half was a student of Kanai Sensei's. And they had been matched up with each other, and so I think they were trying to get used to each other's feeling and movement, and they were just tossing each other around the mat, break fall after break fall after break fall after hip throw. And the woman, her name was Irina, and I had met her before because she was a student of Harvey's, and Harvey is a really good friend of my mom. So I think I had seen her at seminars or parties or something. She just looked like she was having so much fun. Her whole face was alive and electric. And every time Mike would toss her in one of those sort of lateral, can I sensei big throws, she
Oh
would
yeah.
just get, yeah, she would just get right back up with this smile on her face, like, bring it, give me more. And then she would toss Mike around and he would go flying. And it was just so much fun to watch them having so much fun. And it was almost like this sentence was like ticker tape across my brain. I just sat there thinking, I want to feel the way that looks. Like whatever
Right.
that is, I want that.
Right.
And to cut to the very end, long story short, when we flew, the night we flew home, I think we flew home in the morning and my mom had class that night. And I borrowed a gi and was on the mat and fell in love and became one of those Aikido addicts. Couldn't get
Right.
enough of it.
That's how it starts.
So that, yeah. So that's how I got into it.
Wow, that's amazing. Similar, kind of similar for me. My father got back into it because he had trained with Yusuf Mekter back in the day. He had done all the
Mm.
Montreal seminars and all those things. He knew Era from those folks. And I started, I guess I was like 14, 13, 14, and he wanted to get back into it.
Wow.
He met Henry Smith Sensei, that was a closer
Mm-hmm.
dojo, and he met Donovan with the goal that I would train with Donovan, but it's a short walk to get to Smith's dojo. So he went, I went and watched the class. Similarly, I saw these dudes throwing each other around. Smith Sensei like dripping in sweat, and this guy taking a big brick fall and running back across the room, and then flying across the room again. And I was like, ooh! And in my mind, I wasn't like, I want to be the most dangerous combat martial arts specialist. I was like, I want to do gymnastics as a kid. I wasn't able to. They're doing all the flippy things. Maybe I'll
Yep.
be a movie stuntman at some point. So this was a
Nice.
direct path for me. And then I saw that and got into it. And the rest, obviously, we know. If you don't know
Yeah.
people, my Aikido and martial arts origin story is available on podcast places. Links in bio. Um,
Nice.
so for you,
Hey, Sue,
yeah,
one cool thing. We have this interesting connection before we even met because my teacher loved your first teacher so much,
yeah,
Henry.
yeah,
And
yes,
then he taught at the Henry Smith Memorial Seminar every year.
yeah.
So we have this weird like
Lineage
Aiki
connection.
parenting. Yeah.
Yeah, it was dope. So how that started, I mean, it was there, but at the time, Smith Sensei, this was like 2009 something, pre 2010. Um, when I was still training under Smith Sensei, he always invited Harvey, which was fine, and he would invite Sagano when he was still around. And like
Mm-hmm.
that was it. Like Clyde Takaguchi when he was still part of things, but obviously we know how that went. Um, and it ended up being a thing where like, well, this is getting pretty stale in the dojo. And at the time, like I didn't have money to like travel and go and
Right.
do all these seminars. I was still a kid. So I was like, hey, why don't you give me a list of folks you want to invite and let me know? And he was like, oh, I don't mind Irv. And I was like, oh, well then look. He's like, oh, he might not come. I was like, dude, I'll write the email. You can proof it. And then you guys can talk monies. Sure enough, I did. Might reach out
Nice.
to Irv, and he was like, "Yeah," because he was always looked out for me. He was always cool and big inspiration as well. So he
Yeah.
was like, "Yeah, I'll do a thing with Smith Sensei. Just tell him to hit me up." So then I got them together, and that started that seminar thing because Smith Sensei just didn't do them. I don't know if he just didn't like the work or he was just like, I don't want to waste all this time. Like he just didn't have a right setup for it. And then I think he got into a formula after that one kicked off, and I was happy to have Irv there and build that connection.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
one of those things that was happy to get exposure to, someone like that. But
We actually have a photograph of Henry in our dojo as a
nice.
relic of Irv stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's nice. I'm still in rec center space, so I don't even have an O Sensei photo, and this upsets some people sometimes. But I'm like, look, well, here's why. Because every time I get one, I have to bring it with me with my like Aikido
Mm-hmm.
package. Or if I don't,
Mm-hmm.
someone breaks it and I'm just like, forget it. Like I already gotta bring enough stuff with me. I gotta put the mats down and pick them up. Happy to have a space,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm like, it's
That's a
just too
lot
much.
all by itself.
Yeah, and I'm like, I gotta, you know what I mean, move things around in the
Mm-hmm.
room. Grateful for the space, but I was like, if I have one less like item that I have to worry about, it's great. But whatever, people get it, And I know some instructors who don't do that anyway. Like if I'm correct, don't quote me on this. I think Yusef Mekster didn't do the O Sensei photo thing for personal reasons, and I get it.
Right, right, right.
Yeah, there's something to that, and it's nice that that exposure and those connections then were made by simple things like, hey, do you want to do a seminar? And a good thing about that is we can kind of segue into like your teaching experience and running the dojo. Um, things like that made it a lot easier when it was time for me to start the rec center because I
Mm,
was already getting an understanding of how the dojo worked. I was always asking questions and helping out with things. But if you could talk
mhm.
about that, if you want to, like, how did you get into a teaching role? Like, what prompted and when did that start? And how were you groomed to become the, super instructor that you were today?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I had never really thought about that, but the the lineup is partly connected to our sensei's dying or passing away.
Sorry.
So when I moved upstate, was 2016, 2017, very, 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 very beginning of 2017.
Okay.
And I joined Irv's dojo, and I knew Irv from being a kid. Irv and Yves Nazon used to come stay with my mom when
Okay.
there were seminars in the area. And I just remembered from being a little girl, like these two handsome, tall guys that
Irv's
I
pretty
that I,
tall.
yeah,
Yeah.
who were a tiny bit scary and intimidating to me. I was always just kind of like, oh, okay, these guys are coming over. So when I showed up to see him, it had been, I don't want to say like maybe 20 years since I had seen him,
Mhm.
but he welcomed me with open arms, and he was just the consummate Aikido host. And my first class with Albany Aikido, he announced my joining and told about my history and was just really lovely.
Nice.
And in my first year of working with him, he asked me to become dojo secretary.
Oh, wow.
So in like 2017, 2018, he taught me how to keep the books, how to keep attendance, how to keep track of hours, how to keep track of testing, how to do the USAikifed.com
Yep.
dojo cho
Dojo Chow
page.
page. Yep.
Yeah,
We all know
how to
that.
do the
Thanks,
application.
Laura
Yeah,
and Karen to
yeah,
follow.
exactly. Thank you, Laura and Karen. Um, and how to do the applications for testing, and how
Yeah.
to organize a seminar, and how to do flyers.
Yeah.
And Irv was a natural born father slash mentor slash teacher. So he really took me under his wing and taught me how to run his dojo. And he had a kind of particular style too that was
They all
unique to
do.
him.
Every
I
last
know.
one of them are their own
Yep.
special creature in a positive way. They're all very particular. I think
Yeah.
that's part of the business. In Aikido, I won't
Totally.
speak to anything else. Martial arts people, just
Yeah.
talking about Aikido right now. Yep.
Totally. Totally. Whereas I had come from my mom's dojo, was my first dojo, and she runs a really tight ship. There's no
Mhm.
talking on the mat. There's no teaching on the mat. Um, it
We're
was,
gonna come back
it
to
didn't,
that. We're
yeah,
gonna
yeah,
come
yeah,
back,
yeah.
we're
We're
gonna
going to
come
come
back
back
to
to that.
teaching and talking. Yeah.
Yes, yes. But in terms of when I first joined Irv's dojo, I was like, oh, it's a little kind of casual. Like people just sort of 10 a.m. class starts at 10:12. Like people aren't lining up before sensei. I just noticed these little things that were different. But
Right.
once sensei was on the mat, if you acted out, or if you did anything out of turn or anything out of etiquette, he found, because he also had a military background, so he had this ability to call you
Ah,
out
I
and
didn't
and,
know that.
and call you out without being a dick about it, but in a
Mm,
way that was so like humbling and like, oh, I was out of line. And he found a way to just teach you a lesson. He never had to teach you a lesson. If you were paying attention, he never had to teach you twice. You learned your place
right.
fast.
And he had a background in
And
karate, correct?
oh yeah, in
Yeah,
fact,
because he
we don't have to
started. We can come
we
back to
don't
that.
have to
Yeah.
I yeah, remind me to tell you about the story the night he gave me my black belt.
Okay.
Because I'm a late bloomer. I my testing cycle got all out of
We
whack. I think
call
that's a
that
whole other story.
sandbagging in jujitsu and other
Yeah.
activities, but we'll
Yeah.
come back to that too.
Yamada Sensei told me to test, and I was only second Q, and I didn't want
Hmm.
anybody to think I was getting any special favors, so I
You're
didn't.
ready. You're ready. I mean, it's not
I
up to
know that
you.
now. I've paid for it big time. I'm a little behind, but that's okay. That's a whole other story. I don't care.
Hmm.
Um, but in terms of Irv, so he groomed me and he taught me how to do everything. Then he and I, we developed a closeness during this time, and then there
Right.
got to be a point where it started to be clear to me that something wasn't right.
Oh.
And at first it was like he would take me out to lunch and eat 2 bites of sushi. And then it would
Okay.
be, we would meet for dinner and he would eat like a bowl of rice. And I would be kind of like, what's going on?
Yeah.
But if anybody knows Irv, you know that he's a deeply proud and private person. So I never
Right.
asked. And then there was one, it was January. He was taking me out for a belated Christmas sort of celebration and to give me a gift to thank me for my work. We were sitting at the table and I was like, okay, I won't be doing my job if I don't ask the question. There is only so many lunches we can have where I don't bring it up. He may be proud and he may be private, but if he wants me to be a good dojo cho, I have to do stuff that isn't always easy, and I'm going to
Right.
ask the question. So we were sitting there and I said, Sensei, you know, I know you're private and you don't have to share anything with me that you don't want me to know, but I'm starting to get the feeling that there is something I need to know. And are you okay? And at that point in time, I now know that he knew he had lung cancer then, but he didn't on that day. He didn't divulge that day that he had lung cancer. He just said, yeah, you're right. I'm struggling, but don't worry about me. I've got some health issues, but everything's going to be okay.
Wow.
And then there was like a 6 month period where he started showing up to class and someone else would do the warm ups. And he had like a sweatshirt on under his gi,
Hmm.
but he still looked like the same size
Right.
outside his gi. And I was like, is Irv shrinking? Like, what's happening?
Yeah,
And
there's something
like,
going on.
something's wrong with Sensei. Like,
Right.
what's up? So then we had another lunch. And we were just kind of keep telling. He was a great storyteller, and so most of lunch
Right.
was me
Yeah, I need
listening, and
that
he
for
would tell.
sure.
Yeah, and he would just be talking about Henry Smith, and he'd be talking about his days with Lukman Sensei in Brooklyn, and
Yeah,
all kinds
yeah.
of stories. And then at the end of that lunch, I said, "Okay, I got to ask another tough question," and he was like, "Okay, Nan." And I said, so I feel like I need to know the answer to a very specific question. And I just need to ask it. And if you don't want to talk about it now, we don't have to. And he was like, what is it? Just say it. And I said, who do you, who do you feel would be the best person to take over for you should you need someone to step up and do that? Because I
Oh,
can tell you're not yourself. I can tell you're not feeling well. I kind of feel like more is going on than you're telling me, which is fine. But if I'm going to do right by you, I need to follow your wishes. And I don't want to be left to have to make the decision without you.
hmm.
And he was like, that's a good question. And at the time, he told me the person that he thought would be the right choice for chief instructor. And it's tough because he's got a dojo of like 25, 30 years of dedication to his teaching.
Right. He had
Then
some senior, like you had some senpai, like some
we
senior
still do. Yeah, we
diehards who
still
are
do.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we have three fifth dans,
Yep.
two fourth dans, a couple sandans, bunch of nidans.
Hmm.
So then that was in like January that we had that conversation, and then March was March of 2020, which we all remember as being that horrible month when the pandemic became the pandemic. In March, Sensei got so sick that he went to the hospital. And the first couple of weeks of March, he was totally out of touch with the news. And I would try to tell him on the phone about the pandemic. And he was just kind of like, he didn't know what I was talking about. I decided not to bother him with it because it was pretty clear he wasn't going to come out okay,
Right.
although no one had said that. And then on March 20th, I think, he got put on hospice and he passed away on the 29th, March 29th. And on
So
March 28th, he called me and he could barely talk. He had almost no voice. And he said, I want you to run the dojo. I want you to tell all of the teachers to choose one technique that they like best that I taught them. I want you to ask them to promise to always teach that technique at least once a week. And I want you to tell Kevin to take over. Kevin was at that point in time his most senior
right.
ranking, longest standing student.
Okay.
And it was one of the most difficult phone calls I've ever had. I've never
Yeah,
actually
I've
talked to somebody knowing that they were going to die soon. And I'll never forget, I said, thank you. I said, I will do it, Sensei. I'll do everything you ask, Sensei. I love you. And I kept just saying, I love you, Sensei. Don't worry about us. We got you. It's going to be okay. And he hung up. And this is sort of a selfish thing to share, but I was completely shattered. And I sent him a text message saying, I just want you to know you're like a father to me and I will always love you. And I sent it. And it was only like a week later that I realized I had texted his email address and not his phone. So I don't think he ever saw it.
You might have. You never know,
He
depending
might
on
have. He might
phone,
have.
the way phone things work. Like, and we can talk about the tech side later.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah, he
yeah.
might have gotten it. You know what I mean? It.
Yeah.
But the
Yeah.
message was there. I'm
The
sorry.
message
That's
was
so
there.
tough. I mean, I lost two instructors, so in my own way, in my
Right.
own
Right.
timeline, I know it's like, oh, it's tough.
It is tough. And I want to extend my sympathies to you too, because I know, yeah, Donovan, I mean, I've also known Donovan since I was maybe
I know.
15 or 16. Yeah. That was more shocking to me, I have to tell you, learning of his passing.
Yeah, that was a tough, that was a tough.
Yeah.
How many like leading up to it? We can talk about this, but leading up to it. So I got a phone call from one of his senior students, but before that, I got a phone call from his ex-girlfriend. And I
Oh,
saw the number and I was like, oh, so I was just like, oh, hey, girl, what's up? And she was like, are you okay? And I was like, I think so. Like, why? And she's like, when's the last time you talked to Donovan? I was like, pretty sure, like, if I didn't text him this afternoon, it was like, a day or two ago, or a week ago or something. Like, we're in touch. I know, like, pandemic was hard for everybody, but, you know. And so I was looking through my text. I was like, yeah. She's like, well, I have some bad news for you. Like, he's gone. And I like gone. Like I knew what she meant, but I was like, no, you're gonna have to speak the cleanest, plainest Queen's English to me and tell me
yeah.
exactly what you mean literally. So she did, and I was like, oh. So I got off the phone with her, and then John called me, one of his senior students, and I was just
Hmm.
like, what? And it was just like phone calls and phone calls, and then the rest of the stuff. And then I called Laura because I was like, I don't know what to do. This is gonna get to you. Someone's gonna tell
Yeah.
you, like, what do you like?
I did the same. I did the same
I was like,
thing
I don't even know what to
when Sensei
do.
died.
But before anyone else says anything weird, because that happened and I get it, I was like, look, what do you want me to do? So I gave her some info. She was like, I'm going to talk to Yamada Sensei and blah. I'll talk to you soon. And she
Oh,
did. And she was like really helpful, like as much as she could be. Plus, I mean, she had known him longer than I did. So everybody's going through it. Then I called Peter Bernath. And I was like, because we had a list of divide and conquer. I was like, well, I'm not going to talk to everybody, but there's
hmm.
some folks I prefer to speak to. And then they don't have to come looking for me because that was the other thing on my mind. Like if they hear from me, they're not gonna be like, oh my God, so like what's happening? So yeah, I know in my own way, and that was pretty challenging. And I got to a
Yeah.
point where recently I've been able to like, which is the Donovan Weight Project and all those things. Even this podcast, like
Yes.
I'm at a point where I
I'm
can
so
like
grateful.
look
I'm
at the
so
video
grateful
and
to you
things.
for
Yeah,
making that series.
thank you. Yeah, it's something
It's
me and
gonna
him
be
worked on
really
forever. Like it wasn't me just like sneakily like filming with the
right,
camera,
right,
like
right,
because he didn't
right.
really like he was like out of the being filmed business, and he knew he was on YouTube. But I was like, look, you can have a bunch of random people filming you, and it's all over, or we can do something together. And I was slowly filming
Hmm.
things, and I had like I borrowed a professional grade camera from my job at the time, which
Nice.
they were fine with, and I'd filmed a couple of things, which will be in the project. Him just doing simple stuff. I
Hmm.
said, look, do the 9, 31, and 20, and the 12 kata, 9, 13, and 31 or whatever. So he did
Hmm.
that. And I was like,
Hmm.
let's do some ukemi and blah, blah, blah. And then he was like, oh, this looks great. I said, the rules of engagement. I'm not posting anything without you seeing it. I'm not making any money off of anything without your approval or you getting a cut. But this can turn into something, and that's where Patreon and all that came from. So yeah, it was
Nice.
nice. Um,
That's great.
yeah, so I'm sorry to hear that, but I mean, you've learned a lot, and it's nice to see that you're still out there. I know I've been kind of like out of the loop with Aikido things, and now I can
Yeah.
actually be in Aikido space like full throttle. And I think most of the folks who know from the podcast, me like going on that journey that I started when Wade Sensei was still alive, just looking for something
Hmm.
more, and then finding it in jiu-jitsu and MMA world, but then realizing that at some point I was hoping to get to a point where I could see connections to things. And now more than that, like I
Yes.
was looking so hard, and I watched the Bruce Bookman Aikido extensions, and I was like, I could do this. But then I realized like it wasn't me like trying to be like at a point where I could just teach stuff and then share it. I realized I needed to just learn, and then what came out is what came out. And I'll share this, and
Mm-hmm.
then I have some more questions for you. One of the
Sure.
coolest things any instructor in Aikido land ever told me was was early on when I was asking to teach. Actually, when I switched to Donovan's dojo, and he very quickly gave me a new Kemi class, and I felt like I wasn't
Nice.
ready for it. And he said, "Listen, you're teaching on Wednesdays." Oh, and I was like, "What the hell do I do?" And he looks over at me and he says, and I'll do the voice because he still had the voice. He was like, "Well, so he would call me so. Do what's there." I was like,
Oh.
"What?" He was like, "What's there?" And I was like, "But what's there?" So he's like, "Do what you know, what you're comfortable with, present your best, and what you need to study, be honest about what you need to study. But assess the room. You taught before. There's no difference between teaching at Smith's dojo and teaching at my dojo. It's like
Right.
it's at the same time, funny or not, it was the same landowner and it still is today. The same, they paid rent to the same people. Funny story. So, and we joked about that. He's
Oh.
like, look, it's the same thing. You're here now. Obviously, you're learning new things. And I wouldn't ask you if I wasn't comfortable. So here's your
Mm-hmm.
shot. Like, you're going to have to build your class. Like, right now, nobody's coming. And I know if you start teaching, class would grow. Sure enough, class grew. And I would joke with my
Nice.
students. I would joke with the students when they were goofing off. I'd be like, look, Sensei might walk in here and check on me.
Right.
Like he may come looking for my black ass. So you better behave. And I remember saying that for weeks and weeks on end. And one day he just popped up. He just rolled in. He had one of his blazers on and the brim. And he was like, oh, hey, bud.
Oh, yeah.
And he would go and he'd do that look, that side look. And then he'd
Yeah.
go to his office. And then one day he just sat. Let me do this sometimes. He would just sit and watch class. And folks were like, oh my
Nice.
God, he does exist. I was like, yes, get your crap together because I'm not trying to get fired from my volunteer job from you
Right,
goofing off.
right,
So yeah, so in my
right.
own way, I've had that experience, but as
I
you
love it.
are, just grateful for having instructors like that, people who are like like my
Yeah,
uncle, I used to call him Uncle Sensei. That wasn't a joke.
I know.
That was literally like my uncle. And that
You're
started,
you're
yeah.
calling him that was famous. We Richard and other folks
Oh
in
yeah.
our dojo called him Uncle Sensei because of you.
And certain people could get away with it that obviously had a
Yeah,
connection with him. And
not
sometimes
necessarily
people,
to his face. Not
no, he
necessarily to
was
his
fine with
face.
that.
They would just say, Uncle Sensei's teaching at Syracuse. You want to
Yeah.
go?
And some folks
Yeah.
would be like, oh, hey, Uncle Sensei. And he'd be like, oh, I don't know you. Who could do that? And I'd be like,
Yeah.
look, I don't, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. So that's interesting about your background and that's the connections we have and those experiences. So, what inspires you now? Because I've obviously talked about this forever, like, yeah, jujitsu and other instructors, but like, what keeps you motivated in your training and your teaching, right? Like, what gets you up and makes you go, dojo time?
Mm.
What is that?
I love that. I love that question. So what inspires me and keeps me going? Well, to finish the answer to your other question, how did I get groomed to teach?
Right.
It was my current sensei's sort of first gesture to me when we reopened after COVID,
Mm.
to give me a class. So our dojo was lucky. Most of the students paid their dues all through the pandemic, and we paid our rent and kept our doors open so that when we were finally able to, as all dojos went through different phases of, like, first we all had to have masks on and it was outside, and then it was
Right.
we could be inside but we all had to have masks on. When we finally were able to have a full schedule back up, my current sensei, Kevin Sensei, asked me to take a class, to teach a class, and I also teach the kids class, so I'm in the dojo a lot for that reason.
Right.
And at first I was a little intimidated because 90% of my dojo is my senpai,
Right.
but he kind of gave me trial by fire because early on in my teaching, like maybe the first month, he
Mm.
went out of town and asked me to cover his Saturday morning, like the prime big class for him. And I decided I had to do it and not be meek or shy or just, and like you said, like Donovan Sensei said, to teach what I knew and not try to
Right.
be fancy and just focus on the stuff I feel confident about. But I will say, I have never learned more or learned faster than having to be in the position of teaching.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Because if,
Yep.
yeah,
You're
yeah. So one of the
accountable.
things that
You're held
yeah,
accountable for what you do,
yes,
right?
yes, yeah. And because you're standing up there physically demonstrating the coordination between your hands and your feet and your center and your shoulders and your posture, suddenly you're thinking about yourself in a whole like sort of more extreme way. Like what do I actually look like? I'm not just messing around having fun.
Mm.
And so teaching has given me a whole added new passion for Aikido because just because of that shift where I'm now seeing things through a beginner's eyes again.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost cliche at this point. What's the Japanese word for beginner's mind? I forget.
I
But
forgot. I'm such a bad
yeah,
martial
that's
artist.
okay. But in any case, it's given me back that sense of beginner's mind. That on top of the fact that I'm at an arc in my practice where I feel like I can see more and I can absorb more. And when I first started teaching or started taking Aikido, I had a brother who was a fourth Dan by 25, I want to say. And I had a mom who was a sixth Dan. And then there was me at age 30, fifth Q, fourth Q. And I just, at first, I couldn't, at first, I was like, huh, what foot, what hand, where do I look, what do I do? And at the time, I was working with inner city kids who were not doing so well in traditional schools.
Right.
And I would explain how to find the lowest common denominator of a fraction 17 different ways, and they would still not get it. And I would get really frustrated with them. Then at night, I would go to Aikido class, and I would be the one whose teacher was saying, nope, try it this way. Nope, try it this way. Nope, nope, not that foot. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, wait, it's good to be not good at something. It's good to be struggle a little bit. It's good to not be just naturally like, oh, yeah, I got this in 2 seconds. So, like 24-ish years into my practice, I feel like I'm at a place where I'm like, oh, yeah, I see what he did with that, and I can then replicate it pretty quickly. And I find that really satisfying and fun. You know, all those years in your practice where you're like, wait, how did you do that? And you try and you don't quite get it, and you try and you don't quite get it. I'm at a point in my practice now where I feel like I can take stuff home from a seminar and teach it, or I can take stuff home from a class that I take at the New York Aikikai or at somebody else's dojo and immediately apply it. And it's just so fun.
Right.
And I also love the fact that I was talking with Sharon Dominguez Sensei at the
Mm.
Christmas seminar. We were doing Taino Henko together. And I said to her, I used to hate Taino Henko. When I was a white belt, I thought it was the dumbest exercise. Like, why are we doing this like 2/3 of a technique over and over and over
It's
again? I was like,
footwork.
yeah.
Footwork.
And I was like, now that I'm more aware of what I'm talking about, what I'm doing, like you can practice so many different things in just Taino Henko. Like you can practice your ma'ai, you can practice your connection, you can
Mm.
practice your body placement, you can practice your intention, you can practice your extension. And it's
Blending is
like
the
the simple,
biggest part in any
yeah,
footwork, and blending
yeah,
translates over
yeah.
anywhere.
But to also like the other end of the answer to your question is I'm at a point in my Aikido journey where I'm feeling totally inspired and excited, and I love teaching, and I really like the community of running a dojo. But at the same time, I'm reaching a kind of brand new level of confusion about what's ahead, what's
Mm.
next, like what's um and partly that's because I'm noticing a pattern of like, let's say a fifth dan is invited to a seminar, but they're not technical committee, excuse me, or
Mm.
shihan quite yet. I go to that seminar, I learn as much, if not maybe more, than I learn at summer camp, let's say, for example. And I'm not downplaying, like, I love having access
No,
to the
and
Shihan at summer
I
camp.
can speak to that as well. We've talked about that
Okay.
in a
Yeah.
professional way. Yeah.
Yeah. But like the people that I think of as my mentors are people who were senior to me at the New York Aikikai when I was there. I skipped over that part. I ended up going back to New York
Ah,
after living
okay.
in my mom's town. 9/11 happened, and I was like, I'm out of here. We
Yeah.
could all be blown up tomorrow. I'm back, and I'm going to New York. So that's a thing I think about kind of a lot. Like, how do we reinvigorate the popularity of hosting seminars for our peers that are
Right.
as well attended as the big names? Like, I would really love to find a way to do that.
And we've talked about this, and I've ironically, and this folks, Aikido folks, I know I'm Mr. Jiu-Jitsu man, but I'll say this in the most positive way. I've spoken to Laura about that, and in my interpretation, not quoting anyone else, I think the biggest thing is like the change, the big gaps now. Our parents, for lack
Yes,
of a better
yes,
term, are gone.
yes.
So I think the landscape is a little complicated. And I think there's some
Yeah.
old mentality that's not necessarily a bad thing. Because if you think about the structure, read the handbook of USAF, US Aikido Fed, you know, my understanding is we have a pay structure, you know, your Fukushida-wins, your Shida-wins, your Shihans make this.
Hmm.
But then there's the preserving the art. And I think that inviting
Right.
like a technical committee and some things that you know that most people don't know, the reason you invite, say, a Penny or a Peter or whoever from technical committee is because they're figureheads in your region and they're assigned to actually vouch for you. So folks who aren't aware, back in the
That's
day, and it's
true.
still probably true, when you're testing and your dojo is not as affiliated or connected on the map, someone from that region is technically supposed to be held accountable for you. So, you know, back in the Yamada days, rest in peace, he would go like, where you
Right.
train? And if you go, I train in blah, 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 and they're like, oh, like,
Yeah.
you train with Penny. No. Oh. So it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's a structure and a reason. And this goes back to what I was saying in one of the other videos, podcasts, where I was talking about maintaining a brand. And we can say whatever we
Hmm.
want, and it's a business, whatever, but in the biggest holistic way, and I think it means well, to preserve the Aikido, preserve the US Aiki Fed, preserve the teachings of our instructors who are very much all
Hmm.
passing, like that's the goal. But
Okay.
as far as the seminar thing, you know, I think the culture is changing. We have to break that mold ourselves and just be like, I'm inviting a
Yeah.
buddy, which is why I use the terminology of workshop instead of seminar, because that
Yeah.
doesn't raise any
Yeah.
eyebrows. Now, I'm a USAF
Right.
Shidowin. So, but I was on the when you train with Donovan, so I kind of had a pass. And your motto was just like, let him do what he wants. He's fine. He fit it. Donovan, you look after Donovan. You do what you want.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yamada laughed at that voice, by the way. I had permission to joke
I love
about that.
it. You
Um,
had a great sense of humor.
he did. So anyway, so like we were saying, that big piece of the community and sharing the brand and preserving the art, like another thing is like we're responsible now. And I think about this, which is why I'm like, like I'll still do the Aikido thing. Like I love it, but the things that I love or didn't like so much, like I've matured and I've had a chance to kind of like see things holistically. But I feel like I have a responsibility. Like I'm not the next Donovan Wade. I was never trying to be, but I do realize and got encouragement from even other practitioners in other arts. Like some of my jujitsu friends are like Taekwondo, or some of them have done Aikido and other things. And that idea of cross training, which I've talked about, like be true to yourself, being
Hmm.
true to what my thing is. And everyone knows this. I'm like Captain Ukemi in my mind. But then I found something else that like I was looking at all the Jonathan Waite video and I was like, oh man, I can look at this and be inspired. And I missed all that. So the other thing was, why don't I focus on Ukemi like I always did, which allows me to be passionate in a space that I'm comfortable. And then I'm also noticing in jujitsu land, there's a big space where Ukemi just isn't a thing. Like people have it or they don't, or they go and look for judo.
Right.
So there's
Right.
room for me to tap into that space and share my own experience. And I feel a lot more comfortable about saying, hey, I'm a purple belt. Obviously, I'm not a guru, but I'm at the beginning phase of coaching. I run a jujitsu rec program. I help coach at my current gym, train jujitsu kids and teens. So I'm on my way.
Hmm.
And I have that encouragement and
Nice.
I say stamp of approval from my instructors. So why not? With that being said, us having that responsibility, like do you feel that? And because that was a big gap for me and a big challenge with the Aikido space. I was like, I don't want to be bothered with trying to carry the mantle because I'm not. Like I can only be my genuine self. And do I want that responsibility?
Yes. Well, I'm thinking a lot of things at once. First of all, I think you being your genuine self brings the best of you to what you offer all of us in Aikido. And so keep doing that
Thank
because
you. Thank
you have
you.
a lot to offer. Um, and I mean, Richard and I talk about your ukemi when we haven't talked to you for 3 months. Like you exist in the Aikido stratosphere as an influence. But
Thank you.
the answer to your question is, yeah, I do feel a responsibility. And teaching the kids program, um, I'm very proud to say that when I inherited the kids program, I had two students, my
I
kid
know. Yep.
and another dojo mate's kid. And we now have, I think we're up to 18 in
Nice.
our kids class. Yeah.
Nice.
So I'm really proud of that. But the other thing that I'm thinking about is a kind of, you've probably had a version of this conversation with your local peers. You go to summer camp or winter camp or even just like a big weekend seminar. and you look across the mat, and there aren't a lot of young people on the mat, and there aren't a lot of white belts on the mat, and that
Mm,
scares me a little bit. And
right.
so I recently joined. I'm sure you've seen his social media presence, but I noticed that Kei Izawa from the IAF
Okay.
was spearheading these youth working groups
I
based on
saw.
region.
Right.
Yeah. And so when I saw that there was a North American one, I reached out to Charlie McGinnis because he's also part of the
Yeah.
IAF, but he's also
Right.
USAF. And I was like, would it be all right with you if I reached out to Kay and said, hey, I'm in North America. I want to be part of the discussion of how do we spread Aikido
Right.
across the, around with young people. And so for the last, what month are we in? April. I
Right.
want to say we've been meeting since last summer. We meet at least once a month,
Hmm.
if not more. And our current project is, so let me back up just a little bit. So we've got Kei Isawa from Colorado, who's
Mhm.
a former student of Kanai Sensei, but now is sort of not really affiliated with any organization other than the IAF.
Right.
We have me and Crystal from the USAF, and we're East Coast. Then there's a guy from Chicago who's AWA. Then there's a guy from Vancouver who's CAA, I want to say, are the initials for the Canadian Aikido
There's so
Association.
many.
Yeah,
There's sort of,
but we've
yeah.
got we've got at least three. Oh, and then there's another guy from California who's Biron Kai. So we've got
Right.
four affiliations, but we have one goal, which is let's create interesting ways to spread Aikido with kids and with
Right.
teenagers. Um, Another guy who's the Biron Kai guy are going to try to organize a kids seminar hosted at the New York Aikikai,
Oh, nice.
and we'll have teachers from all affiliations, and we'll advertise it online and on social media. And also the New York Aikikai has it already, like a captive audience. They've got a really big kids
Oh yeah,
program.
yeah. I mean, they're the foot traffic
So
in Chelsea, New York. I mean, they could.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I feel a responsibility, and I feel not only a responsibility, but a selfish desire to have more Aikido around. Like I don't want
Right.
Aikido to die out. I don't want, I also have a desire, and this is not what you asked, but I have a desire for our system and our procedures to be robust and not just this is how we've always done it, so this is how we're going to do it going forward. Like I want
Right.
our organizations to be able to flex and grow,
Yeah, I think.
no no pun intended, in an Aikido way, and like blend.
I think that
Yeah,
and I think that's happening with, and that's unfortunate that it's like I said, I mentioned about Wild West. I mean this in the most honest way. Like we all know what's going on with people, no, not to discredit
yeah,
them. We got to do what we
yeah,
need to do.
yeah,
Some of us may not have done things in the most professional way, but we're human.
right,
But I'm saying that evolution is happening. And
good,
I think what we'll find is, and for me, starting Aikido so young and you being exposed to it so young, like
yeah,
there was no one my age, like 13, 14 in Aikido.
I
Like
bet,
it's
I bet,
always been niche. And to this day, 23, 24 years in, I still have to explain what Aikido is. And the internet has done good and the internet's done bad
yeah,
explaining Aikido. And no discrediting anyone. We all want to share our presentation, but we have to just understand that whenever we put stuff on the internet, people are gonna have stuff to say. Our
yeah,
message is our message. If we want to just show fancy, fancy stuff, great. Someone's going to say something about it. If we want to show our
hmm,
most genuine, blah, blah, blah teaching stuff, someone's going to say something about it. And regardless of
right,
the negative parts of the internet, there's a piece where I think it's nice that it's shared, but there's also a part where like Aikido just isn't represented. Like it's there, but people don't give it credit. And for reasons I understand. Case in point, you can say what you want about Steven Seagal, but if there wasn't a Steven Seagal, no one would have benefited from Aikido. I would have started Aikido. My dad would have been like, oh, if it wasn't for Above the Law and Below the Rim or all those movies he made, we would have never have gotten into Aikido again. But then you speed forward and you look at other martial arts where like
hmm,
the whole MMA thing and jujitsu, like you look at John Wick, you can see Kodagaishi in the movie.
oh, totally,
Problem is the presentation. And
right,
I think there's so many people who are, and there's plenty of folks on the internet that have been around way longer than I have in that space that explain this. And I think what's going to happen is I think at some point folks will look more for traditional martial arts because I think the
mm,
American mentality is like, I want it now, I want it quick, I want it fast, I want to learn how to fight, I want to feel like everything's effective. And keep me honest, it took me the longest time to learn something from Aikido. Like the falls did it for me. But
Mm.
before I learned, like I was a few years in before I felt like I could technically do something, like and actually like throw
Hmm.
someone sort of. But my
Right.
training wasn't like most people's. And you trained with Irv, and I'm pretty sure he had a karate background. Is that correct? I think he started at karate in
Yeah.
Japan,
No,
and that's how I
he's
found
done
Aikido.
every
I think that's
except
what.
for BJJ. He did every other. He did kung
Right.
fu. He did karate. Yeah.
And that sense that I got from him is obviously moving the Aikido. It was beautiful, but folks like him, those instructors of that generation, knew how to find the effective and not effective parts of the practice, but still preserve the art. And I think that's the part where people get confused. And I've talked about this in another podcast, like martial arts equals self-defense, right? Fine. But it doesn't always, right? And it can and it
Right.
doesn't have to be. But I
Right.
think
Right.
I hope that people learn, and I'm only speaking about Aikido space. I hope that people learn that it's okay. Like if you do Aikido in a style that's like just flowy and whatever, then do flowy Aikido. Like that's the point.
Yeah.
It's beautiful, it's blendy.
Yeah.
That's why I started to do the flips and stuff.
Yeah.
But don't be offended if someone says Aikido is trash, because that would be just like I'm wearing a blue hoodie and people are like, blue hoodies are trash. I'm like, oh, but
Right.
my blue hoodie is the best because of the
Right.
fabric. I'm like, dude, no one cares about your damn hoodie. They just wanted to
Right.
say something. But like that mentality and that negativity actually made me train harder.
Yeah.
And
I know. Me too.
like what actually I was going to, I'll tell you this story. I was going to do jujitsu anyway. A good friend of mine, um, Jackson Beargalka, he runs North Star MMA. What's up, Jackson? I always bring his name on the podcast. Introduced me to Ernest and Sandy. Ernest and Sandy, you know. And the day I was going to look at jujitsu schools, I messaged him. He gave me some names. I had some names. He told me what he thought. I won't repeat their names, but he was right. And it was about my temperament, not like just crediting the schools, but like, hey, I know you well enough to know XYZ. I know these price points, up to you and your wallet. But starting out, this is the best place for you. He was right. I looked at all the places. I took a class at one of the places. And then when I went and landed with Ernest and Sandy, I was like, oh my God, like it's a small gym. I'll get individual attention. It worked. It was run kind of old school, even though they were fairly young. But that day, I was like ready to go see these schools. Some idiot on the internet was like, "Oh, your Aikido's and blah blah blah." And I was like, "Okay." He was like, "Yeah, I bet you if I came to your gym, I'd whip your ass." And I was like, "Bro, I'm not saying I want to fight you, but if you want to come to the gym and figure some stuff out, I'd be open to figure out what you got going on." And I said, "You matter of fact, come to the rec center." Now, me being in that frame of mind, I was like, "Yeah." And I was thinking, like, look, I'm not gonna try to kill this guy, like get killed by this guy. But the conversation turned into a conversation, not just this person trashing me. I was like, yeah, come here. And I was like, I'll do some falls, I'll show you some stuff. You can show me something, I can show you something. Let's make something out of it. But you're not gonna trash me, bro. Like, if you want to do this, come here and let's do this one martial arts to another. And he was like,
Nice.
oh, I don't live in your country and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay. So then I went to class and his thing, and it stuck with me, and it still does today. And I'm grateful that he was talking so much crap. He was like, I dare you. I dare you to go and try your Aikido somewhere else. And I was like, I'm thinking to myself, like, I'm going later, bro. Like, if as soon as 5:15 hits, I'm leaving work. I'm going over to this first gym and another and another. And that stuck with me. And I'm so grateful that that little bit of negativity turned into something positive, because
Nice.
I got my answer. Yes, my Aikido nonsense does work in other places. My ukemi, the
Yeah.
blending, the intensity I
Yeah.
had, and things I've learned. And the more I train, the more I see connections to things. But I can more so respect the Aikido now for what it is and
Nice.
appreciate what I've learned, as opposed to being like, oh, don't make fun of Aikido. I'm like, who cares?
Right.
Someone always has
I know.
something to say, you know?
I know. I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm. Well, all right. We're gonna have to do a part two. This is phenomenal.
I love it. I love
Yeah,
it.
we're gonna have to do a part two. But it's been a pleasure. Obviously, I'm gonna hunt you down and message you and torture you all the time and be like, hi, 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 like I
Right back
always
at
do.
you.
Um, people can find you how? Do you want to share social media stuff, or if people are in the area, how
Yeah,
they find your
sure.
dojo? Where do people
So
find
Albany
your?
Aikido we're albanyaikido.com,
Okay,
our website, and we're Albany Aikido on Facebook and on
awesome.
Instagram. Yeah, so those are the easiest ways to find us.
And I'll share those in the link in bio. But
Thank you.
it's always a pleasure. Glad to continue this friendship and help improve it. We'll
Me
collaborate
too.
somehow. I'll talk to
We're going to.
your
I've already
code.
been thinking. I've
Yeah,
already got a plan in action
I'll
in
have you
my
down.
head.
We'll do a thing. And everyone, thanks for tapping in, and we'll catch you on the next podcast.